Hello and welcome to today's tutorial with Gary. Today we're talking about Xelement.load function in Visual Basic.net. We had an app that was written in Windows 8.1 that worked fine, calling an XML file from a web URL and using it in the program. However, when we decided to upgrade that program from a Windows 8.1 app to a Windows 10 Universal app, we found that the XML.load function no longer accepted URLs from the web as the XML file. So we needed to determine a way to fix this problem. So to show the problem, here we just have a basic app. There's nothing fancy on it at all. All we did was add a label, a text box, a button, and a text block. The text box is called text XML file. The results box is called text XML results. And then we have the button. Now if we go to the button click event, we'll see here the control that we're trying to use. And basically all we did here was declared XEL as an Xelement equals Xelement.load, and then we're loading in whatever we type into that text file, the text box on the main screen. And then we're going to take the text block and we're going to load that with the results of whatever we get from the Xelement. We're just going to turn that to a string and load it in there. And we'll see that if we load this and try to run this program, here's our program. We put in a test file just for the purpose of this program at garyspcrepair.com, test.xml. And what we find when we hit the button is it gives us an error, an exception, and it says cannot open this file. The URI parameter must be a file system relative or absolute path. So it won't let us accept it anymore from the internet. Now in the 8.1 version, it worked fine like this. So we went onto the forums and tried to figure out what the issue was on Microsoft Developers Network, and no one could seem to tell us a solution to the problem, why it was acting that way. And my only guess was, what brought me to our solution that we came up to here, was that because the Universal app is also available on phones and so forth, some of the things are restricted for the phone code, and this may be one of them. So therefore, when you're creating the Universal app, it has to abide by all the rules across the board, and they just probably didn't update the definitions, the definition remarks that they have in there to let people know. So it just comes up as a code error. So this is what we came up with. The first thing we did was we checked this address to make sure that we can indeed get our XML file. We can read it right off of here. We don't need to write to it. We don't need any special permissions. All we need to do is be able to read what's there. So when we looked at the code, the definition for, I'm sorry, somebody got bounced over here. When I looked at the definition for the XML load event, what I found was, now you could do this several different ways, but what we found was that the definition can work not only with a URI, but it can also work with a reader, a stream, or a text reader. So I decided to go by way of stream. I figure if I can convert my XML file online to a stream, I can stream it right in. Now the only solution that we found on the MSDN forum was to download the file into a local file, but then you have to worry about being able to access the local file and getting permissions and so forth. So with the stream, I don't have to worry about that. It'll stream it directly into the app. So let me show you how we can achieve this. So here's another app. All that was added on this app, this is with the assumption you should be able to pull these in and put from the text block, from the toolbox. We just have a label. We have our text box, we have our button, and we have our results. They're named the same way, txt XML file and txt XML results. So we can find them in the backing file. Now we double click on our button, and now we have our button click event. Okay, first though, we're going to start down here and we're going to create a function. So we're going to start with a private function, and we're going to make this an async function. And we're going to call it get Xelement from URL async. Now, provided I typed that correctly, I can go on here. We're going to pass in one parameter, and that's the file address, the address to that URL that we want to read from, as a string. It's pretty straightforward. And for those of you who aren't familiar with async functions, we can't just pass back our Xelement with a async function. It's a task of Xelement that we return. So here's our function. Now our final, well, first we need one import before I get any farther. So we need one import. We're going to import systems.net if you don't already have it imported, so we can use all the functions we need. And basically what we want to end up with is an Xelement. So at the end of this function, we're going to return an Xelement dot load, and this time we're going to give it a stream, and my caps lock is stuck on. So here we go. We're going to return, and we're going to just call this stream 1. We'll call it. Now obviously it's not declared or anything yet, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to return back our Xelement load, and we're going to use the stream function that it allows us to use. So the first thing we need to do is create a request to go to the web and pull down our page. So we're going to declare a request as an HTTP web request, and we're going to equal that to web request.create, and here's where we're going to pass in our file address. So now it'll go to our file address on the web and ask for whatever it can pick up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to recreate a response, but we're going to recreate response task as a task of, you guessed it, web response. And the reason we're going to do this is because we are going to call a request dot get response async. So since it's returning it back from an async function, it's going to return back a task. The task will be loaded with the information we need, but first we have to capture the task. Then the next thing we do is we declare our a response as the actual web response, and we'll equal this to await a response task. So it'll call the a response task, and it'll run that for us. And then it'll capture it as our web response. So now that we have our web response, really there's only one thing left we need to do, and that is declare our stream, which will be stream1 as a stream. And then we can just equal that to a response dot get response stream. So now it grabbed it as a stream, and it's going to stream it right into our X element. So now we go back to our button click event, and we start off by capturing our X element here. So we need to call our function and get back our X element from our function. So we declare X element 1, whatever you want to call it, as an X element, and we equal that to our wait get X element from URL async, and then we have to pass in our text XML file dot text. And it's giving me a hard time here because your button click is not async. So we can go here and we can make that async. Okay, and then we have our, basically this is our text box on our main screen where we're going to enter in our address. It's going to take our address, pass it through this function, run it through the function, and return us back our X element. Then all we need to do from there is take our text results, text, and you can use it any way you like now. So now we have our X element 1 dot to string. We're just going to bounce it out to a string to see if it works. So now if everything works, we can run this. And here we have our page again. We'll go to our test page here, if I can type. And if I type that correctly, we can see our X element. So you can see it's passed our X element in, and it's reading the X element fine. So now with that, once we've written it one time, we can create this into a class, or we can put this function somewhere else. And anytime that we need to call this, all we need to do, instead of calling X element equals X element load dot load, the file name, all we do is we have our X element, and then we just have to await our get X element from URL async and pass in wherever we're getting our XML document, and then you can use your XML or your X element any way you need to. So this is the solution I found. I hope it helps you guys out, and that's going to be it for today. Thank you.